Ma'am, I'll start as soon
Yes,
as.
please. Okay.
So, good evening, everyone. I welcome you all to the workshop. And I'm already seeing that few of you are already doing MTech in the subject of CAD/CAM. And we also have very new students like the students of BDS first year. So, we have a diverse audience. So today I'll just give you a very brief overview of how digital technology is useful in the subject of conservative dentistry and endodontics. Now we have come far ahead in the subject of technology. If we see around us everywhere, we can see advancement in technology. Even small kids nowadays are so familiar with technical gadgets. So the new generation is coming up with newer ideas, and similarly, in the field of medicine and dentistry also, we are marching ahead in the field of technology. In every field of dentistry, in any field, a rapid adoption of digital workflow has transformed everyday practice. It allows surgeons to make more effectively and accurately plan in an interactive 3D environment, create surgical guides, and immediate outcomes are there. Immediate rehabilitations in one sessions are also possible owing to this digital advancement in technology. We have various systems like CAD/CAM, then guided endodontics, intraoral scanners. So whatever we used to do in many steps, now the steps of the workflow reduced, and in single sitting only we can come with desirable outcomes. So broadly classifying the digital technology in endodontics, basically the workshop is about modeling 3D scanners, but other modalities also I have touched a bit only, like in diagnosis, digital radiography, or the fiber optic transillumination, or the CBCT technology. These all digital advancements have helped us a lot in making the correct diagnosis. In restorative dentistry, CAD/CAM technology and digital smile designing. In endodontics, guided endodontics and targeted endodontic microsurgery. And one of the very important aspects of this digital advancement is the digital learning, which we are using nowadays. So we all know that it is not a new thing. It is recent, but not very new. We have already shifted from the manual intraoral periapical X-ray films to the digital ones. And we all know that we are all using RVGs and Diagoras and all these in our practices. And these have not only made things easier, reduce the steps, but also planning, then communication, then storing of records, everything has become so simpler. And very important, the radiation dosages have reduced much. So digital technology offers rapid image acquisition. The CCD based systems acquire images instantly, quicker than chemical processing. They are easy to store, can be rapidly accessed, do not degrade with the passage of time. These offer significant clinical and administrative time savings. These are environmental friendly because we bypass the use of fixers and developers, so less use of polluting chemicals. Patient friendly because images are there on the display on the screen, so patient education can also be enhanced with the help of these tools. Transmission friendly because they can be shared on various platforms, digital platforms like email and other platforms. And various examples of these are the radiovisiography units, the flash dent, sensor ray, VIXA, and in our department, we are having the Diagora, which uses the reusable PSP plates. Then one of the very much studied, we have all studied in our BDS also, the use of digital fiber optic transillumination in the diagnosis of early caries lesions. In this, light is passed through a fiber optic device through the teeth, and then the transmission of this light is acquired with the digital CCD camera, and the outcome is digitally translated and reflected on the screen. Then coming to the use of CBCT, it has largely replaced the traditional 2D radiographs because we get a better view, three-dimensional view. We can understand the intricacies of the morphology which are hidden due to overlapping structures in the 2D films. But definitely we have to take in consideration the actual requirement and not use it in every case, keeping in mind the radiation dosages involved. Still, CBCT has much less radiation dosages than the conventional CT scans. So these are the use in the, we can compare it with the IOPA films compared to the CBCT images. So we can see the in all sections, the axial, sagittal, coronal compared to the IOPA, where we are stuck with just the 2D image. Now coming to the computer assisted designing, computer assisted machining, that is the CAD-CAM. Computer assisted design and computer assisted manufacturing and intraoral digital scanners have become popular as alternatives to conventional impression making and casting methods, especially with the introduction of a new range of digitalization tools and scanners. The fabrication process comprises scanning the abutment tooth, or not only the abutment tooth, any work preparation, any tooth preparation we are working on, designing the prosthesis and milling the restoration in a centralized milling center or with a laboratory or chairside process. The potential for CAD-CAM to enhance prosthesis accuracy is based on the omission of several fabrication steps, and CAD-CAM may offer similar or better results than the conventional methods. CAD-CAM in restorative dentistry. Materials used for inlay and onlay restorations are glass ceramic blocks and composite resin blocks. Glass ceramics include feldspathic porcelain, lucite reinforced ceramics, lithium disilicate, zirconia lithium monosilicate reinforced glass ceramic blocks. CAD-CAM technology has enabled the use of new composite resin blocks with dispersed fillers and a polymer infiltrated ceramic network material. These new materials are polymerized under high pressure and high temperature. Therefore, this process yields higher mechanical and biological properties than the conventionally polymerized composite resins. Moreover, these new composite resin blocks have improved resistance to fracture and machinability due to a low elastic modulus close to dentine. These are the various chair-side CAD-CAM systems available.
So I think what we mean to say that in restorative dentistry, CAD-CAM is now deep rooted. All the materials can now be milled as required. So we are moving towards more accuracy. We are moving towards personalized medicine. We are moving toward precision medicine.
Yes.
With use of these 3D technologies. We would also love to hear from orthodontist Dr. Vinay Chugh how this technology has been involved in orthodontic practice.
Very good evening to all. Am I audible, ma'am?
Yes, yes.
Can I share my screen, ma'am?
Yes, please.
My screen is visible, ma'am?
Yes, yes.
Very good evening to all. First of all, I would like to introduce myself. I am Dr. Vinay. I'm currently working at All India Institute of Medical Sciences, Jodhpur, as an additional professor in Department of Dentistry. This is our beautiful hospital building and the medical college. And this is the department where I work. We have newly furnished department recently. So let me introduce my specialty a little bit, then we can build upon it. So, because there is a diverse audience, so I just want to apprise that I am a specialist in orthodontist and conventionally what you call it as braces. And these are the various components we usually place in the patient's mouth when we are treating the patients, and the course of the duration of this treatment is usually around 2 years, and it may vary. And to reach to any conclusion for the treatment of any patients, we need certain diagnostic records. Like in medicine, we require X-ray or any blood or investigations. Similarly, we require few investigations, and that investigations are in the form of usually diagnostic photographs. And these are study models. We take plaster models. We make these models for those who are engineers. How we construct these models will form the basis of my presentation. So conventionally, what we are doing is we usually, if you want to make a negative replica of the patient mouse, what we do is we select transfer trays, and then we put a hydrocolloid material, and then we make this small impressions in the figure number 4, and then we pour these impressions with plasters, and then finally we get these models, and which we trim on the model trimmers. And this is the final models we get. So this involves a lot of steps. So conventionally we are doing this. And what do we do with these models? We make a lot of measurements on these models, and conventionally what we do is we store these models. These are plaster models because once the treatment starts, there are a lot of changes in the tooth movement, and finally we reach to a treatment where we have to take again these models. So a lot of plaster models, they occupy a lot of space in our operatory, which, with seeing the space constraints in the newer departments and in the older departments as well, because initially they are few, but once your patient profile grows on, you have 400, 500 and 1000 patients, then this, automatically storage becomes a big headache in any operatory. So we are also facing this difficulty. And to overcome, what are the limitations of these models? Basically, they have a tendency to break, and we make a lot of measurements. They have, because they are made of plasters, so they wear and fractures, and storage is one big headache, and that portability when we have to transfer it from one place to another. Then if you want to discuss with these cases with our senior colleagues for final treatment planning, then we have to send the 2D models to them, so they cannot visualize these 3D models, and sending them on a courier, it is a very cumbersome procedure. So to overcome this all, can we go digital? So this is our main idea. So yes, digital technology enhances efficiency. By efficiency, I mean that the faster communication, then the storage can be minimized, and patient acceptance. So once, what will be patient acceptance? We'll see in the further slides. So the key step is to convert this plaster models into digital models is via 3D scanning. So these are the scanners. I think some of the fewer slides also earlier also mentioned. So this is the newer 3D scanner. These are basically intraoral scanners. So they come in, basically they have 3 components. One is this workstation, and another is, this is the intraoral part. This is a band which has a tip which usually scans the teeth surface. So the arch form is scanned via this scanners, and then the data is transferred to and how this data transmission takes place. So if you can see this scanner, this details will be discussed. So I am not going into the details. I'll just touch briefly. So this basically what this does is this reflects a light, laser light, and this light, when it reflects onto the teeth, it is reflected back to it, which is converted into 3D. So white light or laser light is reflected, projected onto teeth, that is reflected back, and by the way of algorithms, this is converted into a 3D shape. So there are various techniques. I'm not going into the details by which this laser can be transferred into 3D shapes. So these are the various intraoral 3D scanners which are available in the market. And this is how we get the digital models once we have scanned this and the data is converted. So now I come on to touch on to the few basics. So what do we do with this 3D models? So I will just compare with the conventional and then the model part. So conventionally, if you want to make measurements onto the teeth, like if I want to make them mesiodistal width or labiolingual dimension, or if I want to make the arch measurements, That is, if we are measuring from one canine to opposite side canine or molar to molar. So these are all are conventionally done, and we measure this in millimeters and we note on our chart files. So now if you have a digital models, you can easily measure all these medials still width and dimensions, this arch forms and this width, arch length, the overjet, that is the horizontal distance between the teeth, and the vertical distance. So these are the measurements which are possible with the 3D models. Now conventionally we place these brackets intraorally with the help of our this is a manual technique. You take the bracket, put a adhesive behind the bracket, and prepare the teeth surface and prepare one by one. So now if we have these 3D models with us, so our orthodontic software allows us to precisely select which bracket you want to place on which teeth. So you can place brackets onto the teeth, and then you can customize this trace. So when through this indirect method of placement digitally, we can customize this transfer trace, and this transfer trace can be used to bond the teeth. So this is an indirect measure. So you don't need the patient whole time. You know, it is proven that indirect bonding takes place less time, because most of the time now you have spent is in the lab, not in the patient. So chairside time of the patient is decreased, and accuracy is also increased. Like we perform when we want to plan a treatment, we perform some diagnostic setups. What are these diagnostic setups? Suppose you want to see if I want to place these teeth into the arch form, so then I will have to, if I want to visualize the post treatment, so I section those teeth with the help of a small saw specifically designed for this dental purpose. We section the teeth one by one, and on the same arch form we place with the wax models and make this as a digital wax. This is a conventional setup. So this whole, it is a very labor intensive procedure. You have to section teeth one by one and then do it. Now, if you have a digital model which have been prepared through 3D scanning, so you can section, you can select each teeth and section onto the screen itself, and then you can plan it onto the screen, and virtual treatment planning can be done. Then virtual treatment planning, what do I mean is that, like if this is in a case of spacing, so if I want to visualize what would be the post treatment, so I can place, there are the after the acquisition of the 3D models, there are separate softwares which allows you, they have different combinations which allows you to plan this movement of the tree in 3-dimensional, whether you move it equally, easily, distally, and then you get what is the final outcome. So based on this outcome, you can plan the treatment virtually.
Thank you, Dr. Vinay.
Last 1 minute,
yeah,
madam.
Yeah,
last 1 minute. So this is, then we want to prepare surgical patients. So we have to make certain splints during the sectioning of the arches, and then we make the surgical splints via 3D printing. So this is another important dimension where this 3D models are playing a great role in helping us in planning treatment. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Dr. Vinay. Now I would request Dr. Shalin Chandra to take over and show us the role of 3D technologies in oral pathology.
Yeah. Am I audible, Divya?
Yes.
Yeah. Dr. Vinay, please unshare your screen. I hope my screen is visible now.
Yes, we can see you are sharing screen. The slides are not yet visible.
Mine is a small presentation. I'll be talking more and showing less. So I'll be talking about digital pathology. So what is digital pathology? First, let's understand. I'll be covering under these topics. And in the end, I'll finish with the role of artificial intelligence in pathology. Now, digital pathology is a practice of sharing digital imagery across laboratories, enabling the experts around the world to work together on cases and facilitating faster development of pharmaceuticals and to enhance the accuracy of diagnostic techniques. I'll add a little bit. This is a textbook definition. Now the digital pathology also help in designing better treatment plans for the patients. So the process involves digitizing the imagery of whole slides under the microscope, and these images are processed, analyzed, stored, and managed in online computer system. So let's talk a little about history of the digital pathology. Now, digital pathology started with something like this. When I was doing my post-graduation about 25, 26 years back, I bought an attachment for my camera. It was not a digital camera. This is a digital SLR adapter. I could not find a manual SLR adapter. So I have put this photograph. So I had purchased something like this to be attached onto a microscope so that I can click photographs for my thesis. Okay. I used to have a digital normal SLR camera, Nikon FM10 or something. I don't remember the model name now. So we used to click with that, and then we used to share it with our processing person, who used to process and give me a film and a printout. Okay. Then we used to take photograph of that and put it in digital format in our presentations. Now, this ultimately gave way to, in 1990s, gave way to an automated system with, excuse me, somebody's mic is on. Can you please switch your mic off? Yeah, thank you. This ultimately gave way to a more advanced system in form of a digital camera, which usually is cooled, a cool cam with integrated CPU giving image immediately. Okay, so this used to create image immediately in digital format. Earlier we were using analog and converting to digital. Now then the microscope based slide scanners came. So what is the difference between this photograph I used to take and difference in slide scanner? What slide scanner does is it will scan the whole slide. Suppose I'll just give you an example. Suppose this is your slide. Okay. Okay. This is your slide. The slide scanner is going to scan the whole image. Okay. And the second advantage of slide scanner is whenever you all might have seen slide in some phase of your life during your BDS or maybe MDS. A slide is never of even thickness and the focus keeps on changing. The scanner has automated focusing system and a computer controlled robotic stage. So the whole slide is scanned in a single plane. So you get a flat, large image in which you can scan in, zoom in, and see it. Now this gave way to, in this initially in initial times, the scanning used to take 1 day for one slide. Now we have automated systems which scan one slide per minute, and you can load about 300 to 400 slides in it, feed in the program here, and you get the results in this screen. And this is quite a costly system. This is the economical version in which you can load 2 slides at a time and scan 1 slide at a time. Now this is the difference between the traditional pathology and digital pathology. In traditional pathology, we do prepare tissue, which is there in digital also. Then we courier it to a pathologist if we want a second opinion. In this, we just create a digital slide and do computerized analysis and automated patient diagnosis come. In this, the slide is analyzed under a microscope and then the patient diagnosis comes. Now, digital pathology benefits: improve analysis, reduction in errors, enhanced imaging, improve productivity, better patient outcomes, and reduce long-term costs. Reduced long-term costs are in 2 ways. One is we don't have to store the physical slides. We have the digital image on the server of the company from whoever we have purchased the space, which is a secure server, and the image will stay all the time. And I can share it with n number of individuals for second opinion, third opinion, and it results in better treatment planning for the patients. So that also reduces treatment cost for the patient because there is no mistreatment. Then digital pathology challenges. First is image acquisition. Now image acquisition is a costly affair because equipment is costly. Then image storage and management. with current data speeds, this is less of a headache because we have very fast internet now in India at least. So we can store in online servers and get them back at just click of a finger or the click of a mouse. I'm using iPad, so that's why I said finger. Then image manipulation and editing is easier. Image viewing and transmission and sharing can be done easily. However, in low resource country, difficulties are faced, like even in India, we do have internet, but in our whole of university, we have one image acquisition system in the Department of Pathology. I'll just give an example of what a digital slide looks like. We'll just go online for a minute. Oh my God, this went to. That went to actually Dutch site. So I don't reach Dutch, so I can't interpret what they're going to say. Let's just see a slide of lipoma.
Yeah, we can understand that
Oh.
using digital pathology,
It is
the
somehow not
interactions.
working. I checked
Yeah,
it,
yeah,
but
it's
it's not
okay. It's
working
okay. But
now.
we got the idea you wanted to share. That's it's really easy to visualize and discuss.
Okay,
Yeah.
chalo.
Okay. So with this now,
Let's go to the second part. This was
okay.
about digital pathology.
Yeah.
They were 2 minutes.
Yeah.
It is something quite interesting, and it is actually about artificial intelligence. Now, artificial intelligence has two type of users in digital pathology. One is in digital slide scanning, because AI controls the microscope and scans the slide. That is one use. The second use is in Raman stimulated Raman histology. Now, this is a novel technology by which we can make an image of histological image just like an H&E stained slide without cutting the tissue out of patient's body. Okay, so it is an optical imaging method that provides label-free sub-micron resolution of unprocessed biological tissue. So it utilizes intrinsic vibrational properties of lipids, proteins, and nucleic acid to generate the image contrast and revealing diagnostic microscopic features and histological findings of poorly visualized with H&E images such as exons and lipid droplets. I'll just straight go to how it is done. Suppose we have just taken out a fresh surgical specimen. The earliest way to diagnose whether we have reached the margin, cancer margin, or cleared the cancer margin or not was frozen section, which used to take about 30 minutes in preparation and then about 20 minutes in interpretation of the section. Now, with this technology, image acquisition is done in 2 minutes, parsing is done in under 10 seconds, and within under 20 seconds, we have a final image with us. So total time taken is just 2.5 minutes. So we are cutting about 30, almost 30 minutes time from the OT time. So I'll just show you for comparison how an regular H&E slide of same section looks like. This is a regular H&E slide, and this is a simulated Raman histology slide of anaplastic focus, of neurons, of glial tissue. You can see it is giving a almost comparing slide, comparable image. Without cutting the tissue, we are getting this image. So, road ahead, conclusion. So first, the digital pathology is important in workflow and in medical value. In workflow, it eases our job, makes it easier to diagnose, makes it easier to understand, and medical value because it increases the patient value for that particular test, because we are getting a exact diagnosis. Thank you, Divya. Thank you for
Dr.
inviting
Shalin,
me.
thank you for giving such a nice overview of digital pathology. With this, we can go to Dr. Swati Gupta, who will show us the prosthodontic aspect of digital technologies. Over to you, Dr. Swati.
Thank you, ma'am. So it was a very enlightening presentation from all the presenters, and continuing with what is being talked about is digitalization. So whenever we purchase a machine, be it a scanner, we need to know what are the various techniques, what are the various technologies which are behind that machine, because not all the digital scanner follow the same technique or the same technology. So a brief overview, a bird's eye view, I shall say, about the commonly used digital techniques to scan. These techniques are this is what I found. I was like that the presentation would be at what time. So I was wondering at 5 o'clock, what should you call? So it is still 5:59 p.m. It is late afternoon. At 6 p.m. it actually becomes good evening. This is how the software, the computer looks like when you enter the machine, when you start the machine to start with the scanning process. You need to enter the patient's name, the patient's ID, date of birth, and email. And as you must have realized that this is how it stores. So the physical data is converted, and we are recording it, and this is how you can refer back by just knowing the patient's name, and if the patient's name is not known, maybe date of birth or the email ID. So these are the various ways by which we can go back to retrieve the data or to analyze the data if we want to see it again. Scanners are everywhere. In our daily life, they are everywhere. A barcode scanner which scans the object and tells the price of that object, airport, railway station, we are scanned everywhere. It's not us as dentists or engineers that we get the opportunity to scan teeth, but or the face, but we are scanned at every point of life. We are scanned everywhere. Who invented the first scanner? The first scanner was invented by this gentleman in a team led by him, Mr. Russell A. Krish. And what he developed was a drum scanner. It was the first scanner to be developed. And what he scanned was the photograph of his then 3-month-old son, Walden. Now you can calculate that what would be his age now. So it was in 1957 that the scanner was first invented. When did 3D scanning came into picture? Just a small history, because it is important for us to know whatever we are going to know about. Laser triangulation was the principle. It was developed in Canada, and it was in 1978 that this 3D scanning came into picture. Scanners are there in surveillance, and how do they scan? How is this biometric thing done? It is done when there are 80 nodal points. There are 80 nodal points on our face. There are 80 nodal points on our face. So first the face image is captured, it is extracted from the data, then it is compared with the various faces which have been already scanned and present in the data system, and then matched. And this is how the criminals are also located. This has all been talked about, the various uses in dentistry, but by this particular slide I want to emphasize on the types of scanners. There are extraoral or facial scanners, and there are intraoral scanners. The extraoral scanners cannot be used intraorally, but there is a between the intraoral application, which is that intraoral scanners are now being tried. They are now being tried, used for
Please see if you are not unmuted, everybody. Please mute yourself.
Okay, So ma'am, I'll continue. So coming back to the scanners. Scanners, as I said, are of two types, extraoral and intraoral. The scanning technology, as was referred by Dr. Vinay, it can be of these many types and there are few more. Laser triangulation, structured light, photogrammetry, stereophotogrammetry, confocal, laser pulse, and then there is one more, active wavefront sampling. Laser triangulation. It is very easy to understand this technology, in which there are 3 points. One is the laser source, then is the laser point wherever it is pointing on the object, and then is the camera. This is the emitting beam, this is the reflecting beam, and the angle between them forms the part of triangulation formula. These are the reflection points. And when this particular scanner, this is the sensor as well as the camera, there is a light source. There is a light source, and in this case, the light source is laser. When this laser projects a dot or a line, a single line, that is why it is also known as laser line profiling. So when this laser projects or casts a laser line on the object and it continues to move on this object, the emitted light is reflected back and is captured by the sensor. Now there is a deviation between the emitted ray and the reflected ray. Now this deviation forms the basis of triangulation, and this is how the surface of the object, the curvatures, the contours, the sharp angles, the line angles, all of it is calculated and the shape of the object comes into picture. So a laser line or a single laser point light reflects of the 3D scanned object. Its initial trajectory is modified and picked up by a sensor which is there in the camera. From the modification of the laser trajectory, remember I mentioned about the emitting beam, emitting ray, and the reflected ray, and trigonometric triangulation, the system can differentiate a specific deviation angle which is directly linked to the distance from the object to the scanner. So when many such laser lines fall on the object, they are reflected back in a different manner with a different deviation angle, and that is how the sensor draws or maps the shape of the object, and that is how we scan. Again, a very simple presentation. Again, we need to have 3 points. One point is camera plus sensor, then the target is the object, then the laser source or the light source. This angle is to be known to us. When we know the 2 points, then the third can be calculated very easily with the help of the technique. So I try to again to re-emphasize this. Light falls on the object, it is reflected back, and it is reflected back. There is a specific deviation angle. It is sensed by the 3D scanner and it is transferred to the screen as digital 3D image of the object having the 3-dimensional aspect. When we talk about any scanners or anything, there are certain advantages and certain disadvantages. The advantages are, if we talk about scanners per se, are the resolution and accuracy. Then obviously it would definitely have a disadvantage or disadvantages as well. Then it's sensibility to shiny and transparent surfaces. By this I mean that if the surface is shiny, if it is reflective, then the diffusion of the light will not be so proper and the scanner will not be able to capture the shape of the object and we will not get a good scan. After the laser light triangulation, we talk about structured light. If you remember, in laser light, I said that in laser light, the laser would cast a small dot, a single dot, and it would keep on casting and the image would be keep on building. Whereas with structured light, this light comes from a special source. The light can be of two types. It can be white light or it can be a blue light. So this structured light, it, unlike laser, it covers the object, meaning with a laser there would be a specific point, but when we talk about structured light, there would be a series of linear patterns, or a lot of dot matrix on the object. Now when this reflects back, the object deforms the light. Now this deformation is captured by the sensor, and that is how the triangulation is done. If you see in this picture shows two cameras, whereas this picture shows just one camera. There is significance to this because, as we all can appreciate, the accuracy, the reliability, the detailing would be much better with two cameras as compared to one camera. But as we have progressed with digitalization, now even with a single camera, the field of vision is so good that a reliable scan can be obtained. And this is what it says: the object distorts the light line. This light distortion or curvature is captured by the camera and used to calculate object depth, structure, and detail. So this is about structured light, as I mentioned earlier about this use of two cameras or the single camera. Structured light 3D scanning technology uses trigonometric triangulation and works on a series of linear patterns. And what is the principle? The principle is to examine the edges of each line in the pattern and to calculate the distance from the scanner to the object surface. We all don't have to do this. All this has been built in by the engineers. All this has been is there in the camera and the software. We just need to know that the machine which you are using, which technology this machine is using. And these are a couple of scanners which are using this technology. ATOS is another scanner which uses this, and it works on a structured fringe projection. See the time needed to scan. As per this article, the time needed to scan was 25 seconds. Now this line is slightly important. The scanning was done without reference points. Generally, when we do a scan, there are certain reference points, so that if we take 3 pictures, there is a reference point in each of those 3 pictures to align those 3 pictures and to get a 3-dimensional image. But with this particular scanner, they were able, with the help of a best fit software. You would see many names of software. Some would call it mesh mixture. There was some by the name of Argo. So there are many types of software, like the one which is there in KGMC, which is there with Dr. Divya ma'am. They use Vectra software for facial scanning. So with the help of software, the 2 images or the 3 images or the 5 images are stitched together by aligning the nodal points. Remember, I had talked about the surveillance part, scanners and surveillance. There are certain pre-decided nodal points. It's not like there are 3 operators and all 3 of them will have their specific nodal points. No, you cannot do that. There are specified, uniform, standardized points which you have to pick. And most of the time it is a software which prompts you to do that if manual stitching is required. So that was about, this is the fringe projection. I was talking about the linear pattern projection. This is how it is done. This just a minute. This light is projected and there are 2 CCTs, which is charge coupled devices, the cameras, and it senses the pattern on the face, and how this object deforms the light is captured by these sensors, and the object shape is formed. Preeti Denta, it is a German-based scanner. This also uses triangulation principle, in which there are 3 points. One is the light source, the other is the object, and the third is the sensor or the camera. So these 3 points, when they join, they form a triangle, and based on this triangulation, they map the surface of the object. This works on structured light. By structured light, it means that either there is a white light or a blue light. And based on the various articles, it has been mentioned that blue light has a smaller wavelength, and that is why it has greater benefits as compared to white light. Advantages, as I said, there are certain parameters of speed, resolution, ability to 3D scan people. Disadvantages, sensibilities to lighting condition. Sensibilities to lighting condition, meaning if you are wanting to do it under ambient light, like the light which I am sitting at, then this will not be able to pick up the scan properly. So based on this lighting also, the scanners are divided into 2. One is active scanning technique, and the other is passive scanning technique. So after the laser light and structured light, I try to break the differences. It uses laser light, structured light uses a grid of white or blue light. It emits multiple laser dots on the object one after the other. Whereas structured light, as I mentioned, it covers the object in one go. And structured light is generally taken for smaller objects. It has a faster scan, whereas a laser light scan requires time, because light by light the object passes through that line of laser, whereas when it is structured light, then a series of linear pattern can be can be projected on the object, and it is able to do that. Structured light is cheaper, and laser light, it is generally used for industrial purpose. We use in dentistry as well. Then photogrammetric, it is very easy. If we don't have a scanner, but if we have a DSLR camera, then this technique can be used. Obviously the software needs to be there to stitch the images. The software needs to be there to stitch the uh, mm, uh, to stitch the images. So photogrammetry is the science of making it is like, I call it 2D scan converted into a 3-dimensional scan, just by knowing your software. So the principle is to analyze several photographs of a static object taken from different viewpoints. That is very important. Like for example, if you're talking about a digital design, then the lip, the smile line of the patient, meaning that the patient has to keep his face still without any smiling, then a slow smile, then a wide smile, so that the dentist can appreciate even in the patients of the in the absence of the patient, with the help of CBCT and the facial scan. Three things are required for digital smile designing: facial scan, CBCT, and intraoral scan. How to position the teeth, where to position the teeth, what would be the visibility when the patient would smile. So a complete 6 dimensional picture can be presented to the patient. So it is very good in treatment planning, but it is better in telling the patient that with so many changes in the mouth, this is how the patient is going to look like. So this automatically detects pixel corresponding to the same reference point. This is what I am again and again emphasizing upon. It is based on a mix of computer vision and powerful computational geometric algorithm, because it is imaging which has been done, and now this 2-dimensional is being changed into 3-dimensional. It is even called as reverse engineering. The data input required from the user are the focal length and the lens distortion. The engineers in this group would be able to explain the focal length of the lens and how to calculate the distance from the object. They would be able to understand. The result of photogrammetric based acquisition is point cloud. What is a point cloud? It is very easy. If you break this word, 2 words, point cloud, into each word point and cloud, it is positioning of points in space. It is positioning of points in space. And when these points in space join with each other, they will form a triangle. And when these many triangles would form, they would scan and give us a geometric shape. So the result of photogrammetric based acquisition is point cloud, which is then meshed to construct the surface model. This is a picture which I took from one of the articles. See, they have used 5 cameras to capture the face at various levels, so that a complete 3-dimensional image of the face can be developed. See, this is what the 5 cameras have captured, and how these images were made into a complete 3 dimension was by aligning with these reference points or the nodal points. As again, precision, acquisition, speed, disadvantages, sensitivity to the resolution of the input photograph. This is a point that we need to know. If the photographs are not of good quality, then the computer cannot work like us. We are still the main computers, and the time it takes to run the computational algorithm. Then modification of photogrammetry, which is stereophotogrammetry. This estimates coordinates. When we talk about 3 dimension, then it is X, Y, Z, and it relies on passive light projection and software rather than active projection and hardware. When I mention passive light and active light, there is a difference. Passive light means any scanner which can capture the image in ambient light. Any scanner which can capture the image in ambient light comes under passive light projection technique. Whereas active projection, if I may ask, so can anyone tell me, I have just explained the various techniques in which, can anyone tell me, active is when we specifically direct a certain type of light onto the object to be scanned. So what are those 2 techniques which would be classified under active? Okay, one would be laser light and the other would be structured light, because with laser light we are focusing a specific type of light, so that is active scanning technique. And with structured light we are focusing a specific blue or white type of light, so that is also requiring a certain specific type of light, and that is why it is known as active. The Vectra system which is there with Dr. Divya ma'am follows this stereophotogrammetric facial technology. The camera is smaller, easier to handle, and the production is cheaper, even though the reliability is of comparable standard. So this is stereophotogrammetric. Then it is confocal. Till now, I was mainly talking about the extraoral facial scanning. Confocal, as the name suggests, focal. So it is something related to the focal length of the lens. So when this intraoral scanner projects a light, when it casts a laser light, then this particular imaging technique detects the sharpness area of the image to infer or to calculate the distance of the object, which is correlated to the focal length of the lens. We don't have to do anything. It is all inbuilt into the scanner. We just have to know that this is what it is about. And the three shape intraoral scanner, it follows this confocal 3 shape, and 3 shape comes under iTero, and Trios and iTero are the true intraoral scanning companies which follow it. Even CEREC has also launched itself with confocal imaging. So as I mentioned, confocal imaging based on acquisition of focused and defocused images from selected depths. A tooth can then be reconstructed by successive images taken at different focuses and aperture values and from different angles around them. Then there is active wavefront sampling. It is also a type of imaging technique. The scanner by 3M ESPE. It follows this particular imaging technique. The scanner by 3M ESPE, it follows the intraoral scanner, it follows this imaging technique. This was about the technology. Ma'am, do I have time to talk about a bit about the technique? Okay, so I would continue with it. Facial extraoral scanners, techniques, and something more. This is the digital workflow and this is the conventional workflow. Conventional workflow requires a lot of interaction between the patient and the operator. A lot, many times. Whereas in digital workflow, it is a one-time procedure. It is a one-time thing. It is a one-time thing. It is a one appointment. Patient comes, you scan, and you let the patient go back, and then you play around with all the scanned images on your software, and then you do either you fabricate a mold or you directly print the prosthesis. Though when I say that print the mold and print the prosthesis, people must be wondering that printing the prosthesis is very easier because now everything is done, we don't have to do anything. But as we are still progressing and catching up on perfecting this digital technology, we are still progressing and catching up on the digital technology. Printing of a lot of facial prosthesis is still not a very clinically viable and a feasible option due to many reasons, some of which I would cover up in this presentation of mine. From where to scan? Since we are talking about extraoral, the face can be scanned directly. It can be laser scanned directly or from the plaster cast. That is the finest of the wrinkles can be captured on the plaster cast, and then it can be replicated. Laser the scanners have this facial scanners have this drawback that the depth of the wrinkles are not very well produced when scanned. Then besides the patient's defect area, you can even scan the normal area. That is, if we are talking about a unilateral ear defect, then if we scan the unilateral ear defect, how to make the ear? As a prosthodontist, I would say wax up and carving the ear is a tricky procedure and there is a big long learning curve. But when we talk about digitalization, if the patient's normal ear is there and it is in normal shape and size, then you scan the normal ear, you mirror image the normal ear on the defect side, make few left and right changes, and you have a fitted ear on the patient's face. Now you print a mold. Into this mold, you fabricate a wax up. You just have to pour wax and the try-in phase would come. You take out that wax ear, put it on the patient's defect, adjust, do the minor adjustments, and then the pattern, one does not needs to do the whole carving and the waxing, so the scanning becomes easier. And even if it is a bilateral defect, the question should be, if it is a bilateral defect, then what? Then there is something like DDB, which stands for digital database. Centers which are developing, they can have a digital database and they can try and select one of the ears of the donor or of a previous patient or even of a family member, ear, nose, lips, to replicate the same. So this is from where to scan and what to scan. These are the various facial scanners which are available. Vectra is there in KGMC. Then this is how it looks. This is, all of them have some different colors and shapes and size so that the operator knows which scanner is which company. This is Vectra. Vectra I'll be explaining about. In this, there are 3 reference points which are marked, or which should be known to the operator to accurately capture the image. There is a detailed explanation. This is a positioning mat. This is a positioning mat. On this positioning mat, you make the patient stand, not sit, face towards you. The feet should be placed here and the patient should remain completely still. That is very important with photogrammetry, because if the patient keeps on moving, then image is clicked in a millisecond, it would not come out correct. So the patient has to be completely still. The patient's eyes should be open, gaze fixed straight ahead. There are reasons why it should be done. Not looking up or down, mouth closed, relaxed facial expression. Sorry. Then for the right and left view, the camera has to be angled upward. I'll just show that. I'll just explain that. Right side. It is very self-explanatory. Even if you have not done it, if you just read the manual, with a bit of hit and trial, we'll be able to manage it. So stand at 45° from the direction the patient is facing. The patient hold the camera. The camera is to be held at your chest level, meaning at patient's chest level, about 12 inches away. If you move further, then this particular camera projects a small dot on the patient's face. So if your camera is not aligned properly, then those dot will be 2 dots. It will not be 1 dot, because until unless it is 1 dot, you cannot capture the image. And to make it 1 dot, you need to understand this positioning. And where should this dot on the patient's face be positioned? This dot is emitted by the camera. And where should it be positioned? If you draw a line between this and this, and you draw a line from the lateral canthus, so the dot should be projected somewhere here. This is how the right side can be captured, and the same goes for the left side. But for the center, as per the manual, raise the camera to level with the patient's face, and you need to position this dot, this 1 dot, converge the red dot here between the upper lid and the nose at midline on the philtrum area. And like we did for right side, we shift to left side and we do that. I'll show this video later on. This is how the 3 images of a particular patient was taken: front, left lateral, right lateral, and this is what it gave. You must be wondering why are the ears not here, because I took a screenshot from the video. So the image showed no ears, but there we were able to capture the 2 images, the 2 ears as well. Again, next case of ankylosis. Uh, for planning purpose, the images were clicked by Vectra, and this is what it is there. Now this, when combined with CBCT, a lot can be done, and in the subsequent course designing, this would be talked about. So you must be wondering if this is a uniform way of doing things. No. Does the patient remain stationary and the photographer moves? No. There are different systems with different parameters, like this face scanner by OBI Italy. It was used to perform the scanning with the scanner fixed on tripod and the patient in front of it performing head movements as guided by the acquisition software. When I say turn left, right, up and down, you can relate with the face scanning thing which our phone does. When we have to make our phone aligned with our face, then we have to scan our face, we have to follow little up, little down, and the whole face comes and gets registered, and now only your face can open up the camera. So this is something like that. The position of the face. Now what are the faults which we tend to do? The camera has to be straight. We cannot have camera like this, because if you do camera like this, then this would come and it would say automatic stitching failed. The computer would say, sorry ma'am, I cannot do it anymore, please do it manually. And when it would do it manually, it would again give you prompts. See in this picture, it is saying mark a nodal point, and subsequently it would mark a nodal point here, nodal. You would mark the point as directed by the software, and then you can manually try to stitch it. And this is what it comes: 3 eyes and lopsided ear. So the moral of the story is the software did manage to stitch, but it managed to stitch a 3rd eye as well, and managed to stitch left and right ear upside. So this is not right. So we need to know the correct way, and with a bit of learning curve, it comes. So these are the reference points. We wanted to see that if the images are not taken properly, what happens next? Because we learn by our mistakes. Until unless we don't commit mistakes, we will never learn. So manual stitching is done, and this is what is achieved. Many things are missing. Many things are missing, and if ma'am has to do orthognathic or something like that, this would totally be of no use, right? This is a very interesting review article. For scanning different parts of the face, there are different scanning techniques which are preferred. For nasal prosthesis, it is a combination of CT, photogrammetry, or laser scanning. For auricular, it is laser scanning. Now, what is the purpose of a data acquisition for nasal prosthesis? for designing and printing the mold, not printing the prosthesis, because it has a limitation that it has been seen that moisture and muscle movement affected the overall fit, especially for prosthesis directly designed and printed. So as I mentioned, that we still need to move forward. We still need to move forward. Auricular prosthesis, the purpose of laser scanning is, one is to record the defect and the other is also to mirror the healthy tissue over to the defect side. Orbital prosthesis, 3D photogrammetry and laser scanning. Directly printing the prosthesis is possible, but it comes with a big but. What if? So it is still not so successful. Ocular prosthesis, laser scanning, and it has been seen that digitally designed and printed iris are pretty successful at some of the centers, though the limitations with ocular prosthesis is difficulties in appropriate volume reconstruction and inability to mirror healthy globe is still lacking, and our engineers are working, and maybe few years, couple of years, maybe a year or so, we'll have something like this. And as I've been mentioning learning curve, oh, I forgot to write the article name. There are capturing difficultness with the various landmarks. Easy is forehead, cheek and chin. Medium, earlobe and eyelids. Hard are the teeth, extraordinary canals and the nostrils. So with this, there is one other technology which is contact based 3D scanning. That is, probe is moved all around the object. What a facial scanner cannot record, besides a few many more things, facial skin wrinkles as facial scanner cannot record. Now we have another few slides. Intraoral scanner, ma'am, not many, 10 15, so I would continue. So intraoral scanner can, as I mentioned, the starting can do three things: face, intraoral, teeth and the ridges. Face, these are the various intraoral scanner, how they look, the tips with different companies. This is how you do it. This is one advantage, that you scan and you see the image immediately on the screen besides you. We try to record, use intraoral scan, using the intraoral scan for recording the ear. So there are a lot of many gray areas. This is tried recording nose, the eyelid. So adapting intraoral scanner to the facial scanning, some more months, maybe a couple of years, and it would be done. Now with mucormycosis into picture, people having intraoral scanner, they are wanting to scan the maxillofacial defect. But this is where the intraoral scanner has its limitation. It is very good with teeth, with ridge, but since the tip is large, but so if the patient has a good mouth opening, you can insert the tip inside the patient's mouth. And how to go about it? We need to look for an area like a tooth or a teeth, which the scanner can easily identify, and then proceed in a uniform manner. We cannot do it like this. We cannot scan like this. The scanner, let's say if we want to scan something like this, we cannot put our scanner here and scanner here and here, and this would scan. No, we need to scan a scannable part and move in a circular motion, so that all the images get stitched and we get the complete defect. But when we talk about a defect like a maxillectomy defect, the inside cannot be seen, the light does not enters there, and the scanner is not able to pick up scan from there. That is one limitation with intraoral scanner when we talk about scanning the maxillectomy defects. Also, if the surface is smooth, then it is not able to stitch or align the previously recorded images. So that is one limitation of the scanner. These challenges are due to hardware and software limitation. Scanning tips are often too large. It can be very challenging to capture the smooth, reflective, scarred surfaces and accurately build an impression on these tissues. When I say that, let's say we have scanned this. Now, if I want to stitch this image, this should also be scannable, and it should be able to reproduce or realign itself on the previously scanned image. So that is very important when we talk about the challenges. This is a picture I took from Divya ma'am. Difficult to scan the depth of the maxillectomy patient. In fact, we were having this discussion, and ma'am was like that there is a company by the name of Wow, which has a small scanning tip, and that tip is most likely can be used for patients with limited mouth opening. Now, when we talk about teeth, I had mentioned three areas. One was the face, the second was the maxilla and all, and the third is the teeth. When we talk about teeth, how to go about with the scanning? We need to start in a planned fashion. These techniques have been documented by the confocal scanners. This is the light green. You start from left maxillary. If there are teeth here, then try to scan as much as surface of the teeth as possible. Maybe slight occlusal palatal angulation. Try to scan as much as surface of teeth as possible as you move your scanner, because then only image by image, image by image, scan by scan can be stitched together to increase the accuracy and to increase the reliability. So you start from one end and you continue to the other, and then you move to the facial side and you scan the facial side complete, and then you move palatally in this manner. This is known as bucco-palatal technique. When I say this, it is very easy. But when you do that as a beginner, it is slightly less easy. When we talk about S-shape technique, so this is how it starts. Palatal side of the left maxillary tuberosity is zigzag, labial, buccal, facial, palatal, palatal, facial. So this is how you do that, and then you come to the palatal section. Then another technique, which is palatobuccal. This technique is different because it tries to scan the palate aspect first, but I would suggest and I prefer to have my teeth scanned first and then go to the palatal side, because the stitching takes a bit of time, and that's what this particular article also, when compared the various techniques, concluded that the presence of palatal rugae effects. The scanning strategy, as I mentioned, polished surface, a big no-no. You have to powder the surface, but now with the advancement in the scanner, most of the scanners are able to pick up the image. It should not be but too polished. Then it has to be a one-way scanning. You cannot do like, you cannot go this and this. It has to be one way, starting from one end going to the other, then coming facially, and then going palatally, right? Then a linear sweep on occlusal palatal surface. And there is a problem which I as a prosthodontist face when I'm using my intraoral scanner, that is CIRAC, is the problem which I faced is that of continuity. Meaning, I'll talk about this slide. The red box indicates that the continuity of scanning is disturbed. Meaning, when I'm scanning an object, if the continuity between the scan is lost, then CIRAC would start with a different kind of noise. It would indicate that I have to go back, not to the start, but I have to go back to the previous position and to start from there. Whereas in 3-shape, if the continuity of the scan is not maintained, instead of a green rectangle, a red rectangle would keep showing. So different companies have different ways of aligning their operator. That scanning is disturbed. Please don't go back to the start, but just go back a little back and then start. The points to remember: The scanned object should be positioned at the center of an acquisition area to describe an optimal sphere around the object so that the maximum surfaces of that object can be picked. It should be held in a range of about 5 and 30 mm. The scanner tip should not touch the teeth because it then abrades the scanner surface. You need to maintain a fluid movement, always preserving a steady distance and the tooth center during recording. This handling is particularly difficult during the change of axis. Remember when I talked about the ridge, when you shift from the occlusal surface to the buccal, and when you shift from posterior to anterior, it takes a bit of learning curve. These are two words which you need to know when you talk about intraoral scan. I'm not going into detail, just for you to understand, to remember, because this would be talked about the trueness and precision. Limitation: lack of clear landmarks in edentulous area with the absence of anatomic reference point. A scanner is unable to very well capture the rounded surfaces or surfaces which are bald, unlike teeth. Anatomic limitation to the ios axis in the posterior region. Impossibility of recording the tissues under selective pressure. By this I mean, although there are a few articles in available on net talking about a digital complete denture fabrication, meaning that the scanner was able to record, to scan the compressibility and to record the same. I have my limitations and many more people still have their limitations when we talk about recording the borders and the compressible tissue. Inability to record the soft tissue dynamics. So these are some of the limitations. Why each iOS scanner may be different? Because of iOS system, scanning technique, light source, imaging type, whether powdering is required, tooth morphology, tissue mobility, span length, and many more such factors. Then factors influencing the accuracy of 3D scanners, something like that. 3D scanning pipeline, that's the official technical term which we use when we talk about scanning to the final model. Advantages of scanners are unlimited. Many of the advantages have all been discussed. Disadvantages: cost, extremely costly, difficulty in handling, technique sensitive, and depth accuracy is still in progress. This is a common short form which you will encounter when you will learn more about it. That is STL. It describes a succession of triangulated surfaces where each triangle is defined by 3 points and a normal surface. This is one STL file. There are other file formats for recording color, transparency, and texture, such as PFF and PLY files. It is all about teamwork, meaning 3D facial scans, when merged with intraoral and CT scans, can give us a better and a larger picture. When we talk about scanning techniques, we need to know the scanning time and the data processing. Scanning time is the time needed to scan the face or the teeth. Data processing is when the patient can go away and we can still do that. It can be divided into pre-processing and post-processing. Then to summarize, different machines have different scanning strategies and different results. Scanner will work only if basics of the operator I mentioned are in order, meaning we cannot jump to the latest and forget how to do the prostho or how to do the ortho part. Discard and repeat if a scan is improper. If scan is acceptable, but you still want to modify, then don't keep scanning, but make a copy and then start trying again. The tip for this is because many a times an acceptable scan becomes unacceptable because of bad stitching. This requires learning a new skill set, which involves playing around with computer and the software, which involves experience with complex software solution for free-form sculpting. And this requires not only time, technical skill, but artistic vision as well, because we need to guide the scanner and the software on how to go about it. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Okay. Yeah. Am I audible now? Okay. So all these speakers provided a very good overview of the topic of scanning. So I really appreciate the time and efforts from all the guest speakers for today's lectures. And I think everybody got a good overview of how are the clinical applications of scanning. As you saw, all the specialities of dentistry and medicine basically require scanning, and how it's very, very essential for all of us to learn and adopt these technologies in our daily practice. So with this, I would appreciate if you all can provide us today's feedback. And tomorrow again, we'll meet at 5 p.m., same link. So see you all tomorrow. With this, thank you all for your participation. If anybody has got any question, the speakers are here to answer your queries. So please unmute yourself and you may ask if there is any.
All understood, ma'am.
No, I think this today's orientation. So with this, we'll get more and more questions in the coming sessions.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. See you then. Bye.